Shadab, the founder of Lease Cake, and today, we're coming at you from our Cake quarters here in Winter Park, Florida, and we are going to be unpacking a deceptively simple idea, and it's all about the right site, the right way, and doing it right now. So we'll start with how to pick markets and sites, and then how to refine to the one location that wins, and finally how to move fast enough to hit your opening date without cutting any corners. We always like to keep this interactive, so we're going to start with just a quick poll. Which steps slow you down the most? Is it finding options? I'm going to share the poll. Hopefully everyone can see this. Is it finding options, refining your shortlist, or getting um, to an opening date? And you can really select one, two, three, or all of the above if you'd like. We always find it's fascinating to get this kind of feedback, and we'll revisit this and we'll share the results at the end or near the end of today's session. So today, I am so pleased to introduce an expert in real estate, a GIS broker who's the director of business analytics, and he lives this every day. He comes from Mohr Partners, MOHR Partners, and they provide global corporate real estate advisory services. Welcome, Taylor Hatchett.
Thank you, Taj. Great to be
Absolutely.
here.
Well, so you've got a fascinating story of kind of how you started in the industry. Why don't you share your background and how you came to Mohr Partners?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people in real estate, sometimes they just tend to stumble into it. Um, but I have a degree in GIS from the University of Oklahoma. Started out in economic development, working for the Chamber of Commerce, trying to recruit companies to Oklahoma City, and really using data visualization and GIS mapping to map out demographics, labor trends, major employers, things like that, doing the cost of living index. Um, so combining all those skills that I've learned there at the chamber, brought it over here to Mohr to create solutions for clients looking to choose a new site to help with their portfolio management, understand maybe they're in acquisition mode and they need to understand what their target acquisitions are like compared to their portfolio to see some overlap, all the way to just doing lots of demographic research and site selection modeling.
That's fantastic. So you're probably like, the 5% of the world that actually went to college for a career that you love and you're still in it.
It was my first A in college, and that's how I knew. That's how I knew I fell into something really cool.
That is super awesome. And you've got your hands on so many different knobs and dials of tools and solution sets. So if we zoom out a bit, right, and you're going to cover this, but great site selection really blends data around truth, right? You have raw ingredients, your customers do, and they usually include like, your store portfolio, historical sales, customer household data, site attributes, operational metrics, right? This is the foundation that lets you understand where your customers actually are coming from and why certain stores outperform. So is it true that, instead of drawing these simplistic rings, hey, we need a 1, 3, 5 mile radius? I mean, it's probably very old school thinking. Um, Tell us about how you define trade areas that reflect, real travel patterns like urbanicity, migration, concepts like sister store truncation. Like you got to talk about that, and how performance decays with the distance away from, you know, downtowns or suburbs.
Yeah, exactly. So traditionally, retail was done just like you said, 1, 3, 5 miles. Um, it was an easy way to get information. And at the time, the tools that were able to do that, that was really the only tool to generate those type of concentric circles. Um, it evolved to drive times after that, using an underlying network data set to understand what a 5, 10, 15-minute drive time would be. But there are more tools out there now and more different or different trade areas that you can produce. So something we use here at Mohr is called a threshold drive time. So instead of outlining what 5, 10, 15 minutes are, we ask, how many minutes out until you hit 20,000 people, until you hit 75,000 or 150,000. And here in North Dallas, where I'm sitting right now on a windy day, hitting 20,000 people probably takes 3 minutes, whereas in Mansfield, Texas, where I live, which is South DFW, it's probably going to take more like 7 minutes. So, your trade areas are going to differ. That plays into urbanicity. In New York City, Chicago, drive times you're probably not going to use. You might use walk times instead. And then there are other parameters. Are you doing the drive time to the store? Are you doing the drive time from the store? Those are going to change drastically depending on the traffic patterns. Are you using the time of day that you're traveling? Are you using, 3, 4, 5 o'clock to understand what rush hour would be versus maybe a Tuesday traffic pattern is going to be different from a Friday traffic pattern. So all of these things are taken into account here at More. And then the last one, if we have customer data, we can do customer derived drive time. So what's the drive time to hit 50% of your customers? 75%. We use this a lot in healthcare retail to understand, what the actual, coverage area of a particular doctor's office, for instance, would be.
Yeah, interesting. And so at More Partners, let's talk a little bit about the types of clients that you have, because it's not just restaurants. We've got the attendees here on today's webinar, Lease Cake Live, is they kind of come from all different walks of business and industries. So can you touch on what kind of clients you serve?
Yeah, so like you said, it's wide ranging. We've got everything from office occupiers, warehouse and distribution, and manufacturing. We have all kinds of retail, like you said, a lot of medtail. Um, and those are kind of the big four, right? That cover basically every vertical in real estate. And then some that have a mix of those uses. So especially our industrial clients have industrial spaces along with their maybe corporate headquarters or just different uses.
Yeah,
But it's wide ranging.
that's cool. And so you probably have franchisees, right? Franchisors as clients.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and those decisions of a poorly performing site can have, complete ripple effects, right, across that system.
Exactly.
So let's talk about, obviously there's the strategy and operational efficiencies, but there's also competition. I mean, it's not just and we'll share the poll results here in a little bit, but the game of real estate is incredibly competitive, and it's important to find your site, right? The right site, the right way, and right now,
Yeah.
as soon as possible, because chances are, I mean, I think it's the lowest vacancy rate that's been around probably for the last 15 or 20 years. New site development is probably at its lowest pace because of the economics and financing and the like. Um, so your competition is looking at that same location.
Yeah. And the development that is out there is getting pre-leased. I mean, very quickly, 60, 70% pre-leased within a few months. Depending on the market, of course, but the spots are filling up fast. So really all that's out there in quantity would be second gen spaces, class B, class C. But some of those class A spaces where if you're a big brand that rely on visibility, those are getting snapped up very quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Um, So let's talk about the stuff that most retailers, and I think you could certainly add in uh, restaurants as well and franchises. Uh, what have they traditionally used or looked at when they're looking at a new site location? Like
Yeah,
tradition.
I think I obviously some of the main demographic factors, right? Total population, household income, if it's site-based, it's going to be traffic counts. If you're real sophisticated, maybe co-tenants. But traditionally, that's really all that's been looked at. Maybe population growth, and then the buckets for each of those. So maybe age groups. What's maybe gender, so male, female. Um, Other than that, traditionally, that's basically all you needed. to
Hmm.
be able to choose a site.
Yeah. Let's talk about co-tenancy. Co-tenancy provisions are oftentimes, they're either overlooked, but you probably can't overstate how important that is, because if that major co-tenant departs for whatever reason, I mean, look at the number of either bankruptcies or locations that are closing, right? They're consolidating. You can have a significant impact. Uh, I mean, in the wrong way, because you don't have any choices.
Correct. And if you, especially if they're the anchor in that center, I mean that you're losing your draw. So there are tons of risks to that
Hmm.
that you need to be looking out for.
Yeah, sure. So what about like drive-by evaluations? I mean, do you just kind of check it out once, or like what have you seen your clients do?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the site, obviously. You want to get some of those factors in, obviously. You'll already have the quantitative information in front of you when you're doing that. You know what the square footage is, what the asking rent will be generally. Um, you have all of those in your spreadsheet, but um, you know, qualitative information is equally important, especially if you are a customer driven uh, brand. Uh, Customers are going to look at, is it in a good area? Does the building look decent? Is there they see a sign so that they know where you are? And then, is it accessible? Do I just have to turn right onto into your parking lot, or do I have to, go down a boulevard to make a U-turn and come back? Those are all factors that would go into evaluating each site. And even though it's
Hmm.
qualitative, those can still be used quantitatively.
Yeah. Is there any quick story that you can share about some kind of non-obvious trade area that beat out like an A plus, like kind of you look at it on paper, it's like, oh my gosh, this corner, we got to be there. Any
Yeah,
example with that?
yeah. So I think that the one that comes to mind is like a C-store concept where being on a corner is super important, obviously. And there was one that popped up in Phoenix, um, one of the marquee corners kind of in the area, but we were comparing it to one of the sites that was on our list that made the most, not the most sense, but it made sense. It fit the criteria. Was more of a quieter corridor, and this marquee corner obviously had the visibility, but um, the second location had a better I guess intercept of the customers, right? So they were the ingress to that property was towards the highway. So this was more of on the way to work or coming back to work. They were intercepting those people, and so and it was directly adjacent to a more of a neighborhood. So um, that one checked out way better than this marquee corner for a lot of reasons, but demographics played a huge role into that, but just accessibility um, and being able to capture those people actually worked out better for their particular type of concept.
Hmm.
So it kind of went against the grain on what you would think this, main and main type of corner would provide, but it didn't fit our scorecard.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Because a lot of times, ego can drive site selection,
Yeah,
um, which is not ideal. When you drive down the expressway, you're like, oh my gosh, that location is amazing. There's 120,000 cars every day that pass by that location. But end of the day, right? Visibility does not trump accessibility. So it's like, what,
correct.
what good does it do from a brand perspective? It's like, oh my God, that's so cool. We should go there. 8 years later, it's like, hey, we should go there. Right? You
Yeah, I
never.
mean, there are restaurants in my neck
Yeah.
of the woods where I would love to try them someday, but at this point in time, I've got to, do a U-turn or take a left on
Yeah.
this boulevard that's, at 5 o'clock is just not going to be possible.
And you never get around to going there,
Right,
right?
right. I need the easier option immediately.
Yeah, exactly. So visibility does not equal accessibility. or
Right.
proximity. There's a lot of iddies in there
Yeah.
in the urbanicity of
They're
migration patterns.
full of it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you want to like, talk about what's changing, obviously we talked about the traditional data sets, knowing your customer and all the kind of regular kind of attributes. What are you seeing is changing that our listeners need to start to pay attention to?
Yeah, a couple of things. I'll start with mobility data, so the cell phone data. So there's a lot of companies out there that will do it, and it's great. We are subscribers to one of the bigger platforms, but um, I think something to keep an eye on are some of the data privacy laws that may come into play regarding, by default, our system is more of an opt-out type of system. So our location is being tracked constantly. We don't really have a say too much on whether it's being tracked and then where that data goes. Um, some states are enacting, I think Oregon is one of them that's enacting more of an opt-in policy where companies can't use this data unless you explicitly agree to it. Not in the sense that we've been doing previously, like having to use this website or app and you agree to the terms and conditions. You're like, yeah, I'll just hit that button and accept. But it'll
Hmm.
be more of a process, an explicit process to gain access to your data. So several states are enacting legislation, or at least it's in the legislative
Hmm.
process to become enacted. So I think that's very important to keep an eye out. That data is great. Um, again, it's something that we use, but if these acts do pass, just be on the lookout for some of that data that might be degraded because of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I think the second thing, probably the elephant in the room, is AI. Um, there are, uh, for people that are kind of in this space, um, AI has become obviously a big buzzword. It's a big marketing term, and it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. Um, Not everyone's data scientist. That's I think pretty clear when you talk to people about AI sometimes. Um, what we traditionally, or what most people are used to, are things like the large language model, something like ChatGPT, to understand. You know, uh, you type in a question and it can give you answers, very detailed answers on certain topics that may or may not be true. But AI is much bigger than just large language models. So anything that you're using algorithms to train neural networks, those can be used in site selection. And we use some of them, some regression analyses, some of the statistics behind the site selection, choosing the variables and making sure that they are statistically significant. AI can reduce a lot of time in that. So that's something that we do
Sure.
hear more.
Yeah. Well, so it's not AI is not a silver bullet, right?
No.
Um, and you have to supplement it with what we call HI, human intelligence, because
Yes.
the smart humans on the front end will program the LLMs to drive the outcomes and hopefully get some results that drive efficiency and speed of information. But the prediction side of it is sometimes of a challenge as well, because it is an art and a science. Because I mean, if you look at potentially like migration patterns, um, COVID showed us that, and it's still happening. So a great site today, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, there could be trends that no AI can see or be fed that information because it has to be a constant engine, right? It has to continue to consume data in order for you to see it. So that's where the HI component has to be looked at. Um, do you want to touch on the, consumer migration patterns, growth corridors, and the like?
Yeah, I think, traditionally it's been, especially for Greenfield, you're looking at major markets, New York, Chicago, LA, Dallas, Houston, Miami, Seattle, things like that. But it's always been just broad. We've got to get a location here. I don't care where, it has to be in this metro. Um, I think doing a more micro version of that is necessary. So for example, something that would get lost in the data, that's a really good example, is the corridor between Austin and San Antonio.
Hmm.
Those are two separate metropolitan areas, but right in between them is I think it's New Braunfels, San Marcos.
Hmm.
Um, but it kind of straddles the line. So if you're looking at just metropolitan areas, you're going to lose sight and um, where that growth is happening. But if you can get a little more detailed, you'll see that um, that stretch between the two is a really hot market right now.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing that micro analysis, you're going to miss it completely.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm going to be doing the Austin, San Antonio trek here probably in the next 6 weeks. So I will make sure to take notes.
You've got to stop by Robertson's ham sandwiches. I promise
Okay.
you, it's
Nice.
life changing.
That sounds cool. So on the AI front, we talked about HI, but I think also you have to be certain that it's full of information. The LLM is full of information that's specific. Like OpenAI can't answer all of these questions. You have to
Right,
have an LLM that's real estate focused and has that pre-populated information so you can look at whether it's co-tenancy provisions or um, specific use cases. What are the rent steps? That can you
right.
afford that? Is the growth pattern going to support the growth of my retail location or my restaurant? So, talk about kind of real estate platforms. How does that how does that play um, into the whole aspect of getting accurate information?
Yeah, I think you know, using something like lease cake too. I mean, that's when you have to have clean data really to look at all of this stuff. So, um, but you have to pair it also with some kind of visualization, geographic visualization, right? So, um, looking at things like cannibalization or like you know, just in general, just looking at um, trying to align all of your departments, whether it's real
Sure.
estate, ops, finance, all of that stuff, but being able to put it into one place that acts as a single source of truth. Um, that's super important.
Yeah, sure. So the typical, say, buyer of site selection resources like what you
Mhm.
have at More Partners, it's but does finance really get involved, right? It's usually the head of real estate or the chief growth officer. But to your point, when you're ready to pull the trigger, right, sign that LOI, get that lease into that pipeline, making sure that you hit your target opening date, you have to bring all the constituents, all the stakeholders. So I'm glad you brought
Yes.
that up, like real estate, finance, um, probably your legal team.
Legal, yeah. I was going to say the same. I mean, you've got to streamline the process because waiting even a day is detrimental, can be detrimental if that
Sure.
process isn't in place.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so you touched on that, right? Waiting a day. So you've probably seen a wide variety of, okay, great, I've found my site, I've got an LOI, and then I've got to nail my opening.
Hmm.
So to what extent does efficiency in that process drive faster opening dates? Because again, it's a speed game. It's
Right.
it's the competition is looking at that same site. Just because
Exactly.
you've got a signed LOI doesn't mean the landlord's going to go ahead and continue to move forward because you've got that, there's a risk, right? Because there could be another stronger national credit tenant that's coming in, and then suddenly the game changes. So all that effort for site selection, all that site analysis, all that resources with all those stakeholders, the game can change so fast.
Yeah. And that's why the process it's just so vital on all ends of it, right? So on say the more side, um, having the short list of sites ready to go that meet the criteria. We have a disqualified list too, if need be, so we can let the client know that um, we looked at all of these sites. These are the ones that made it. These are the ones that didn't, and here's why. But if the, client says that's fine, even though that didn't meet the initial criteria, go ahead and look at that one. We'll run it for all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, but then communication between listing broker and us, the representative, um, making sure that all the information is verified, that whoever we're talking to is timely in their information, to get to that LOI, right?
Yeah.
And then once it's handed off, I mean, it has to run through the chain, because, like you said, competition's looking at the exact same site, and if
Yeah.
there's backlog in any of those steps, a day can kill the deal.
Yeah. Well, and I love the questions that are coming in through the Q&A. So please keep them coming. So tied to that, this exact topic that you were speaking on relates to competition. But there have been a whole, series of closures and bankruptcies, and people are buying more online, so the buying behaviors are changing. How does that explain the fact that it's almost counterintuitive, right? Where how come it's still so competitive? Why is real estate still hard to find? What's your quick answer, or is that it going to require a few days?
I think it just goes back to supply and demand. I think. I mean, there's only so many spaces available.
Yeah,
Um, Even though people are buying online, I buy stuff online all the time, but I'll go pick it up at a particular location because I don't necessarily want it delivered to my house, or the quality of the
yeah,
product is better at the brick and mortar. Whereas, on an Amazon, I'm not quite sure, whatever collection of 5 letters the brand is, that you can't pronounce, you might not trust it. So,
sure, yeah,
um, it might be counterintuitive at first, but still being able to see the brand, know that you have it, where you are
yeah,
and where you can access it is, I think,
yeah.
super important.
Yeah. And so let's spend another minute on this, because it is supply and demand. It's like investing in gold. There's only so much gold in the world. Investing in waterfront property. There's only so much waterfront property. There's not going to be any more of it. Maybe there's going to be an argument there'll be less of it with climate
Exactly.
change. But if you look at any real estate site, because new site development is at its lowest it's ever been in a long time, and
Right.
second gen space is super competitive. I mean, wouldn't it be great to have a sub shop um, that goes out of business, that in advance that, hey, I've got a great sub shop. I'm a franchisee. I want to be in that space because I'm just going to take over the sinks and the back of house and the cooler that's already there. There's a
Right.
bunch of there's a bunch of players that are already pre-scouting for
Yeah.
those potential failures, the weakness in the market. And I'm not a uh, a crystal ball reader, but I think it's exactly what you're saying.
Well, and doing the same analysis, right, for a short list of sites, why not do that with your competitors too? We've already got the information, just do the same analysis as them, or where their locations are. So you can benchmark your locations to theirs, using the exact same criteria.
Interesting.
So,
So it's almost like reverse engineering, right?
yeah,
And I'm not gonna name a sub brand, right? Whether it's a sub brand that starts with a J and another brand that starts with a J, right? You could kind of reverse engineer and say, if I was them, where would I go? And
right,
see if you kind of come to that same conclusion. Because
right. And
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, there are lots of examples of this, right? We see it all the time. CVS, Walgreens, for example. Um, we're mentioning brands, sorry. But they're very famous for being on the opposite corner of one another, right? Um, because there's a symbiotic relationship there. So, it's interesting when you see one just standalone and you don't see the other. So, they're doing the exact same type of analysis, and
Yeah,
again, after those marquee corners,
yeah,
or taking over again second gen space for maybe a previous competitor that they either
yeah,
acquired or that went out of business.
yeah, yeah. And I'd say the not say the younger brands, but the brands that are emerging and growing fast, they might not have a very deep bench from a real estate team perspective, but
Yeah,
they're playing a game against those larger players that know the game of real estate. They've got hundreds of people on their teams, and they're first and foremost probably a real estate company because the brands that you just mentioned, as an example, you could be driving down and suddenly it's on one side of the street and right across is the same brand where they just are figuring out, let me stay one step ahead to lock people out of it, and then they'll repurpose that site and exit it. We've
exactly.
heard of grocery stores doing that because grocery stores are in the real estate business. McDonald's in the real estate business. They're not in the burger business. So sophistication is, I think, what most of the world is playing against. And you've got to be as sophisticated as possible to win.
Yeah, and if you can't do it internally, that's why it's important to find a partner that has the tools and the capabilities to do that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So let's go back to AI. Another question just came in about bias. So I'm going to read this. Thank you, Rajiv, for asking this. How would AI address the question of bias versus preferences in the field of site selection, um, if there's a minimal kind of human in the loop?
Yeah, so I think, um, yeah, that's a really good question. So I think there's, as humans, there's going to be bias in everything that we do, but also with AI, you know, that has to be trained. Um, there's also still human bias sometimes that you have to be cognizant of and that you have to um, run different analyses kind of as you're training to make sure that that bias is not there. Um, you know, bias is again one of those most qualitative aspects that can be quantitative, if that makes any sense. So um, you're trying to minimize that when you're training a model. So if that's um, you know, hard constraints versus soft constraints. So like zoning, for example, is going to be a hard constraint. Your second gen availability will be a hard constraint, but your time to open would be a soft constraint, or your opportunity cost ratio. I'm trying to think of different examples on how you would kind of put that into a
Hmm.
model, but um, those are things that when you're analyzing, um, you have to be aware as the professional, as the HI, have to be aware of the biases that do exist and that you're able to actually see that bias. If that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
cleaning all your inputs and I mean all of that stuff goes into it.
Yeah. Well, this is, I think, a perfect segue into kind of the scoring rubric I think that you all are so good at. Um, because, end of the day, our listeners are here to understand the things that they should look for, the things that are changing in the market. Site selection of 2 years ago, 5 years ago is not the site selection of today and tomorrow. So having that model, use that word. What is your model? It's so important for our listeners and the brands that they work for to know what that is kind of inside and out. And I love the the soft constraints, hard constraints, because I think that's absolutely imperative. You can't just say, "Look, I worked at this company. I'm bringing back these rubrics to this my new company." You've got to evaluate it. So, what is your scorecarding system? What's your ranking system
Yeah.
that you reference?
So yeah, I can't give everything away because
Oh, sure.
then
Well, you've
our
got like what? How many data points do you have at your fingertips?
just looking at demographics, we've probably got about 18,000 that we can look at. And that's again everything from your basics, population, income, growth to um, you know, households that have two or more dogs, or the spend on exercise equipment, things like that that we can map out with really impressive granularity.
Dogs,
Um,
like literally the
yeah,
number of pets.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Um,
it's a pretty important metric when you start to look at pet veterinary clinics and pet uh, you know pet
any kind of
stores
pet
and
stores, yeah, and
yeah.
then all of the other, secondary and tertiary, businesses that would relate to that.
You don't
So
have anything
they're
for turtles. You don't have anything for turtles or goldfish or cats to you.
no, nothing for turtles for sure. We haven't shelled out that kind of money.
Nice. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you. Thank you so much. I'll be here all night. No, so there are kind of two ways we can go about it. So
Yeah.
almost like chicken and an egg. So
Hmm.
um, we can start with our short list of sites and current sites, and we can do a benchmarking analysis. So um, we'll look at, again, it's site specific. We'll go out and do the trade areas that I described earlier. Use that as our basis for in what we call enriching the data. So enriching it with population, with income, with all the variables that we mentioned. We try to pick um, no more than 7 or 8. That will usually be the max. It gets noisy once you get a little past that. Um, and then we will kind of rank order. We can adjust weights. We can run a regression analysis to understand which variables are most important and what we should weight them at. And then we'll output a score, anything from 0 or 1 to 100, that will show the likelihood of success between
Interesting.
those stores. The second way we do it, which is my preferential way, because we can kill two birds with one stone, we can get a good market overview. Maybe it's a greenfield, for example, if you don't have any sites in that market. Um, we'll take an MSA, a metropolitan area, and we'll overlay hexagons. So this is a newer type of analysis, new-ish. I think most people, if they've looked at demographics, or demographic map, are used to seeing census block groups or census tracts, maybe zip codes as their geography. Um, they can look a little wonky. They're not uniform in size. They uh, will change shapes sometimes, or they'll split in two, things like that. Zip codes, for example, there's no single source of truth on what a shape a zip code is.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating history of zip codes. If you have another webinar, we'll do that later.
Okay. Sounds good.
They're my least favorite geography. Um, but Uber actually developed this open source way of generating what are called hierarchical hexagons. So they call it their H3 hexagon model. And they covered the globe in these hexagons. And so think of, like I said, a globe with hexagons. That's the first level. The second level would be putting hexagons in those hexagons, right? So, and it just trickles all the way down. So level 7 or level 8 is typically, that's going to be the most granular you can get. When you get a little more granular, you're talking about like bedrooms and houses is how it's getting divided out. So that's not going to be very useful for us, but um, though that's how we will start to analyze different markets. Again, going through the same enrichment process, assigning a score or weights to the variables, and then scoring those hexagons to understand, based on these demographics, these variables, um, this area or these set of hexagons um, they seem to be the best opportunity. So let's go find sites that are either in them or near them.
Nice. So I want everybody to pay attention because you'll have the ability to get if you're interested to get a More Partners site analysis report. Um, so here's a question that just came in, and we'll share Taylor's information at the end of this Lease Cake Live session. So how do you tailor the model? Like you just described everything that you were looking at. How would you tailor it versus QSR versus, let's say, healthcare or fitness? Like,
Yeah.
is it
So
dramatically different? Like, what would you look for?
I think for some of them, no. I think population growth, and income
Yeah,
generally you're going to use for everything. I think for income, um, a variable that we've started using more recently is percent of income, or we're mixing it with percent of income that's burdened by mortgage or rent.
bingo.
So I mean, that is, you could have a high household income, but if that, the mortgage is high in that area,
Yeah,
um, you're on the same level as some other areas where the household income isn't necessarily as high. So there could
right.
be some skew there.
Yeah,
Um,
disposable income. But I mean, the
exactly.
the, the flip side could be true because you probably seeing the most wealthy uh, hexagons that
Hmm.
probably don't need to go to the gym because they've got their home their home gym, where
Exactly.
they don't need to go to a restaurant because they have their own they have their own chef. Like there's all of the flip side of logic.
Exactly. And that, we have variables that, we can look at the prevalence of eating out versus eating in.
Yeah.
Um, but we would switch out, maybe it's distance to competitors, for example, or the number of competitors within the trade area. That's always going to change based on who the client is and what industry that they're in. Um, and then again, switching out some of the other variables. So some of the spending, consumer spending is usually the one that will get tailored to that particular industry. Whether it's,
Hmm.
again, if it's a restaurant, we will find variables, spending variables that match the index there, or if it's healthcare, we'll do the same there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious about, let's say, either nail salons or hair salons.
Mhm.
Um, how do you know that a certain market has a propensity to get their hair done or get their nails done or go to a massage on a regular basis? Like what kind of magic sauce do you have in the data that shows that?
Yeah, I mean, just off the top of my head, I mean, you're thinking of female population, maybe of a specific age range of the female population, disposable income, saturation of that market. So understanding where the competitors are,
Right.
um, co-tenancy, I think is huge there. So understanding, what are the most prevalent brands that are close to nail salons. So maybe
Yeah.
grocery stores or, um, in what kind of shopping centers are they in? Strip centers, or are they in power centers, community centers? So, um, those are some off the top of my head that I can think of. I'm sure I've got a nail salon spending index somewhere in the 18,000 that I can look through. And that always helps too.
Hmm. Interesting. Um, that's that's pretty cool. Like, how long does it take you on average? Assuming you have perfect data, assuming
Yep.
your client has a perfect model that says, "Hey, plug all these variables in." What's your time frame?
I can do it in front of you.
That's impressive. So,
Yeah.
a question that just came in, like a lot of times brands that are growing, or they're perceived to be small, but they're growing fast. They may not have the budget to pay for their own site selection tool and their team. So is there kind of you know a logical break point, if you will? Like, hey, if you're more than 50 locations, um, you need to invest in your own thing, or could they leverage a firm like yours kind of at every stage of growth?
I Well, I obviously utilize us for every stage of growth. I think that's definitely. I don't know if there's a breaking point necessarily, because I mean I've worked with groups that have two locations.
Yeah.
It's valuable information that I have, but I think at more partners we are definitely um, pretty cost effective, and
Yeah.
it depends on the service as well. I mean, if you've got 50 locations. There's something that, again, we can work out for you
Yeah.
there. But I don't think there's necessarily a break point. It's all the same process, whether it's two
Yeah.
locations or 200.
Yeah.
Um, as long as we have the data, it's the exact same process.
Wow. So, James, thank you for that question. I'm glad you brought it up because we're all in this together, right? We're trying to outcompete someone else that wants that space. We're trying to build our legacy, whether it's and you haven't shared what type of brand or what industry that you're particularly in, but end of the day, it's technology and transformation will win, and those that lean into tech. Uh, Generally, if they understand how to exploit it and take advantage of it, they can move faster, right? We touched on speed, the fact that, Taylor, you can share this instantaneously in front of people when they have their perfect model. And obviously, you're going to share your own insights of things to think about that they may not have.
Yes.
Um, so information gathering, speed for those strategic decisions, but end of the day, the LOI to a signed lease, you've got to truncate that at every step. So, um, I mean, we can't overstate that point because you're not in the business of hiring a real estate team. You're in the business of growing your hamburger empire, your fitness empire, your salon, your sub sandwich empire. So getting
Yeah,
those kind of faster strategic decisions are incredibly important. There's a stat. I mean, it's pretty easy to do the math. So a 5% efficiency savings of time, if you look at one knowledge worker, whether on the real estate team or the legal team, a 5% savings of time can pull over 2 weeks off of your plate and speed up that ability to hit your opening date sooner. And when you hit your opening date sooner, assuming $1 million AUV, again, do the math, $2,740 that your cash register will ring sooner. So you times that by the 14 days or the 5% in savings. Like that's where you can outcompete the competition that's looking at your same site. I mean, am I right kind of in that? Is that,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, um, that's why that first step of getting the sites, understanding what are the top ones, what are the best opportunities based on the data.
yeah.
Um, that's why it's so important. Is just again save time. We're not spending the time going out and searching for sites. Um, the quicker we can do that, the quicker we can get you up and operational.
Yeah. So you've probably seen a lot of different decision committees, if you will. You've got the site analysis, you share the report, you're looking at site A, B, or C. Um, what have you generally seen from a review process? And I know that you're speaking on behalf of the various clients, but what's worked and what hasn't worked? I love these questions that are coming in, by the way. So keep them rolling.
Yeah. I think what doesn't work is having a team that has almost analysis paralysis. So, if the name of the game is to make it the right decision, it needs to be made in a timely manner. Um, you can't sit and wait for everything, right?
Yeah.
You're never going to get there. Um, so if it's just level setting really what the expectation is and on the timeline. Um, if there's good communication between listing broker and us and our client, um, that's that that's everything. That that's what will work and drive everything is having good
Yeah.
communication. Um, I think what works as well is just being upfront with criteria that you need. You know what you need, step one. If you don't know what you need step zero to work that out to then work through the process. But uh, I mean, there's so many things to review. It kind of depends again on the
Yeah.
client and the industry. But um, if you're a QSR, you need to make sure that you're got everything food grade and you've got a grease trap and all that stuff. You need to know that early on so that we can shortlist the site. We don't need to know that,
Bingo.
before the tour or after the tour and going, oh, well, it didn't even have what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So getting
Well,
all
so
that in place is important.
I love it. I love it. So, before we get into some of the mistakes and things that people should avoid, we're going to share the results of the poll because it touches on the finding options and the shared challenges, right? So it's finding site options, common, but refining the short list. So you've got to make sure that you have a process in a decision committee that says, okay, check A, B, and C. And then look at this, all the above. Like, okay,
How about that?
which step slows you down the most? Kind of all of the above. Um,
Everything.
so
But getting to opening, I mean, that's at least a positive. That's
yeah,
not what slows them down. So
right, right.
finding options that's not necessarily a surprise. Um, but I think that's why it's important to have good boots on the ground and a good partner that is able
Yeah,
to go find those
yeah,
on behalf of
absolutely.
you.
No, that's awesome. So in the spirit of more questions, let's see, we're on the time savings, then we'll get to things that people need to avoid. Um, and again, thank you for the question, Rajiv. So, is there a way where data granularity can enable predictive analysis that allows for building decisions before things become like absolutely it's mission critical, like there's a fire drill?
Yeah. Obviously, a larger sample size is always going to be beneficial.
But what does that
So
mean? What does that mean, larger sample size? Touch on that.
yeah. So for example, let's go back to the hexagon example.
Hmm.
Level, and we'll use DFW as the metropolitan area because it's the one I'm most familiar with.
Yeah.
Level 8 hexagon, if you were to spread that across DFW, I think is like 7,000 hexagons, which is a lot of hexagons. So that's 7,000 geographies that you're looking at. Times that by the number of variables that you're analyzing. Whereas an MSA or maybe a level 4 hexagon, level 5 hexagon, there's going to be 20. So 20 versus 7,000 as a sample size is drastically different. And you're able to make better decisions, more informed decisions, and run actual models based on the larger sample sizes so that it can look at the patterns, see if there's a pattern, see if there's a correlation, and be able to do that confidently. If there's 20, probably won't even be able to run because it
Yeah.
will just spit out, not confident, no
Yeah.
confidence in whatever you're looking at.
Got it. Got it. Fantastic. All right. So we are near kind of our wrap up time, but let's talk about the things to avoid risks, right? What are the biggest mistakes you see companies take?
Um, not finding the right site to begin with. Um, that's that's going to cost you pretty significantly. Um, I think, not understanding your competitors and where they are,
Hmm.
not understanding cannibalization. If you're in acquisition mode, for example, um, if you're not looking at how close your locations are to the company that you're acquiring, um, that's a problem. To
It's a good
expand on
point.
that too, I think one of the biggest things is just to do a renewal, just a straight renewal, just to see that the data says or your spreadsheet says there's an upcoming expiration, and you go, great, let's renew it and move on. Take some things off my plate. Easy decision, done. But if you are not, looking at that renewal as an opportunity to run an analysis, just like you would a new site, you may be missing some data, some crucial data that you're unaware of.
Yeah.
Migration patterns may have changed. Growth patterns have changed.
So in
Um,
other words, look at it during the life cycle. I mean, you're making a 10-year commitment, right, for that
yeah,
space generally, and or 2 5 years.
yeah,
Some leases can be longer. So you're saying make sure that you've got a process during that life cycle well before you come up against your renewal deadline. Because
right,
the flip side could be true, which is if I'm smart enough to do it 2 years prior, I could have an early termination provision at no cost. I mean, we've had stories of people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, $305,000, because they weren't able to get out of a lease. And if they had known about it 2 months prior, it wouldn't have cost them a dime. So these little
exactly,
loopholes, these landmines that are in your real estate lease, there's the flip side. The opportunities that are in your lease allow you the flexibility if you use a discipline of using site selection, site viability analysis throughout that process. So I'm glad you reemphasize that.
yeah. We call it a benchmarking analysis, and we
Yeah.
run that. That's how we can determine whether this new site fits your portfolio, and especially your top performing sites. If you're not running that on your current sites every year, every couple of years, you're missing an opportunity to
Yeah.
make a strategic decision.
Wow. Fantastic. All right. So, last couple of questions here as we round out today's Lease Cake Live. What should people be thinking about, right? For someone expanding 10 to 50 locations, what's the number one shift they should think about in site selection? And then where is this all headed? Give us your pontification.
Um, I think they should be thinking about, again, like I just said, um, their portfolio as a whole, what they can do, what the critical dates are, and what they can do to analyze the performance. Um, I think, man, where is it all heading? The AI is just going to take over and take our jobs, I think. No, I think, um, just understanding that there is more to site selection than just finding a space. Um, and there's a lot that can be done on the forefront. There's a lot of data out there, but if you don't have someone who can um, not just run the data, but analyze and interpret the data to stakeholders, you're just going to be doing it
Yeah.
kind of the traditional way, or what will become the old way,
Yep.
where your competition is going to be more savvy and be able to jump on opportunities quicker.
Exactly. Yep. Those teams, those companies that have a whole bastion, departments of real estate experts, like how can you compete against them? It is a game of data. So where is this all headed? Data, data, data. The more information you have, the better. I mean, the whole Uber hexagon framework that you mentioned came
Yeah.
from, a taxi competitor from how long ago? And look at what that impact can make in transforming how business is done so far
Yeah.
away from what the original model is. So
Yeah. Who knew that Uber would end up helping pet stores? Yeah.
exactly.
No
Yeah.
one would have known.
Drop the mic. Drop the mic. All right. So you heard it here first. Uber's helping pet stores. I love it. So Taylor, how do people get in touch with you? Because I think you all were generous enough to provide anyone that's interested to get a complimentary site analysis.
Yeah.
What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yep. My email, we can put it in chat, or we can send out a follow-up, but
Yep.
email me. We can schedule a 15 or 30-minute meeting just as a quick
Perfect.
introduction and understand what your business is, and hopefully how we can help you in the future too. And we could do a quick site analysis so that you can understand the data that we're looking at.
Fantastic. All right. Well, you heard it here. We will be sharing this recording with everyone. We're going to be doing a follow-up, and you'll get Taylor's direct information. And thank you again. Again, we are in the education business, and it's lovely to highlight our partners so we can help the entire industry grow and innovate. So thanks so much, Taylor. Really enjoyed the conversation with you today.
Thank you, Taj, for the opportunity, and I also enjoyed it.
All right. You take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.